Hello and welcome to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. We have a huge week ahead of us with three League of Ireland clubs attempting to make really significant European breakthroughs. Shelbourne and Shamrock Rovers are in Conference League playoff action on Thursday, while Athlone Town are off to the Netherlands for the next stage of their journey in the Women's Champions League on Wednesday. Rachel Graham will join us to talk about that in a little while. We'll also look ahead to Heimir Hallgrimsson's Republic of Ireland squad announcement for the World Cup qualifiers against Hungary and Armenia in a couple of weeks' time. I'm very happy to be joined now by Graham Gartland, Barry Murphy and Alan Cawley to pour over all of that. Before we dig into the football though, I think we should appreciate the best update of this week, or indeed of any week, and that was the news that Stephen Bradley's son Josh rang the bell at Crumlin Children's Hospital to signal the end of his treatment for leukemia. Really wonderful news, Graham, for Josh, for the family, and for everyone really who's been following Josh's journey over the last 3.5 years.
Yeah, I think Stephen had said it was the best week of his life. And, when you get news like that, and obviously Stephen's mother passed away years ago through cancer as well, so it would have been difficult for him when he heard the news that came back. I was actually in the car with Stephen when he got the call to say that Emma was gone into labour with Josh. We were driving somewhere and the call came in, and I remember it. I dropped him back off and he went to the hospital. So, yeah, look, this stuff sort of trumps football, doesn't it? But obviously the whole community gets behind. It's a young kid that's come out of fought the battle and come through it, and it's great. And like you said, that's one of the lucky ones, and they're so grateful for that Josh has come through this, and we all are. Nobody wants to see that for any child. So yeah, it's wonderful news, and it was the right tonic going into such a massive game again on Thursday. But like you said, football is insignificant when it comes to children and illnesses and stuff. So yeah, but still brilliant news for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a way, Barry, for Stephen Bradley to go into that game, boy, by such great news. His team then delivered a really brilliant performance. I mean, we'll talk about Linfield Shelbourne in a little bit, which was chaos. This seemed to be the polar opposite in terms of control, maturity, probably the sort of calmness that you can only get from having banked quite a large chunk of European experience from Shamrock Rovers' point of view. Just talk us through, because I know you were on the co-comms duty for that game for LOI TV. Like, maybe tell us a little bit about how well Shamrock Rovers played, but particularly after they went a goal down over there.
Yeah, you spoke about that European experience, but it kind of hasn't all been good European experience as well. When you look at the back catalogue of games and games they've had to go through, like they got beaten well by Ferencváros a couple of times, 4-0 and 6-1 on aggregate. And you think like they've learned what going away from home in Europe is like. Last season went to Vikinger, got a really good 0-0 draw, went to Celje, got beaten 1-0, managed to bring those games back to Tala with something to play for, and it looked like that was going to be the case the other night as well. Bit shaky in the first 10 minutes, and the first 15 minutes went 1-0 down, but they dug in for the next 5 minutes, which was really important. Played it long up to Gaffney, stayed in the game, worked off him, and slowly built their way into the game. And from then on, they really grew into it. Josh Honahan down the left-hand side, Danny Grant down the right-hand side, Danny Mandreu probably had his best game in Europe for Shamrock Rovers. And the goal came from an intricate bit of play from Danny Mandrew and Danny Grant down the right hand side. Now, it did have a bit of luck, got a deflection and in, but it was no more than they deserved for that kind of 20-minute spell where they stayed in it. Then second half, they were just absolutely brilliant. Josh Honahan had the beating of the centre half. They made a substitution at half time, brought on Pires, came in at right back, and Josh Honahan towered over him for a free kick. Danny Mandrew got on the end of it. Brilliant bit of skill in the box and slotted home, and it was comfortable from then on. And you just look at the difference between that game and the Balkany game in the first leg. The statistics would probably be the same when you look at them for both games, but the performances were totally different. They did well to hang on in that game. McGinty had a couple of really good saves in that game to keep them in it. Didn't have a lot to do the other night, but he did really well. But they'll take huge confidence going in from that win the other night into Thursday.
The thing about this, Alan, like this team came fifth in the Portuguese top flight last year, Santa Clara. They're full of Brazilian. I think there's 17 Brazilian players in the squad, Portuguese players, so they're very technically good. They've got, I think, officially the quickest player in the world in the ranks. Gabriel Silva clocked like over 40 kilometers an hour in May in a league match. So pace and technical ability, accomplished team. Like I'm bearing in mind that Shamrock Rovers have got to this point without coming through the champions path. So no safety nets, as Shelbourne have had. Now the job's only half done, but that's a serious result to take back to Tala, where they're very strong as well.
Yeah, phenomenal result, Anthony. Really was. But without putting too much pressure on Shamrock Rovers, I think they're at the level where they're capable of getting results like this. As you said about banking experience over the years, I feel as though they're well ahead of the teams in the domestic league. Even though they didn't win the league last year, I still think they're miles ahead of everybody else. So even though they haven't come through the route where they do have the safety net, I did not fancy them to go through overall, but I did fancy them to put it up to this team, despite the fact that they finished fifth, as you said, in the Portuguese top division last year. Because they have a brilliant team, Shamrock Rovers, they really do, and a brilliant squad as well, capable of getting results. So even though it's only half the job done, I didn't see the match. I seen the highlights, seen the goals, as Barry described there, and overall I think it was deserved as well, to be fair to them. So I just wonder, did the other team underestimate them a little bit as well? Sometimes, I think over the years teams have looked down their nose a little bit at us in Europe, but I think the fact that we are picking up results on a more regular basis now, I think teams will have to start taking us seriously, and certainly I think this team will be under no illusion just how difficult it will be going to the second leg now in Tala, as you said, where they have very good form. So I think, to be fair to Stephen Bradley and the experience that they have built up and the players that they have, I wasn't overly surprised, Anthony, I have to say, even though it was such an unbelievable result.
Graham, there is, for Shamrock Rovers, they don't have to look too far back to stay in their toes for this, because they went to Molde in the knockout stage of the Conference League last year, got a brilliant win, and then lost in Tala and went out on penalties. So, I mean, in terms of like talking about banking experience, games like that must really serve you well when you're in this situation.
Yeah, they do. You tend not to panic. You can relax in the game and know that, look, and again, in European football, it's different to domestic games where they can flow and another team builds up momentum and you can just sit off and let them have the ball a little bit, where I think when Shamrock Rovers generally play in the League of Ireland, they generally go and get after every team. I think they change how they play. They don't play with a box in midfield in Europe. They generally drop and flatten their three midfielders out, and that way their wing backs don't have to engage higher up the pitch, so they're not exposing their centre backs enough. And we've seen them change last year in the group stages with that, and then they obviously played Bafrouge and Johnny Kenny up front. This time Gaffney's come in, but Mandroiu sort of grabbed this because he does have a change of gear, Mandroiu, and you need that change of pace in Europe if you're going to hurt these teams. But yeah, I think that's where Stephen has learned as well, that look, you can't go and play the same way where you dominate the whole game here, you dominate possession. You need midfielders that are going to get around and cover the ground. And again, if the centre midfielders either side of Healy have to go out and engage with the opposition fullbacks, they do. And Barry will see it when you're in that co-composition, you spot it really. It's so obvious that that's what they're doing differently to when they're at home. Generally, what Rovers will do, their wing backs will engage with the opposition fullbacks up the pitch, and they trust their back three and say, look, we've enough pace that you aren't going to hurt us. But in Europe, he's changed that a little bit. They look a lot more dangerous on the counter-attack at times as well. You've seen that in the goal they got against Rapid Vienna last year. Honohan gets down the left, and he's become a real attacking threat. I think Danny Mandroiu's touch for the goal is superb. I really do. It's soft enough that it allows him to get his shot away, but it's hard enough to take it past the player and to do that on the move. That's what you're hoping that Danny was going to do when he came back. But I agree with the lads. Like they'll be coming here knowing that they got a bit of a fright as well. They probably did underestimate Shamrock Rovers. They probably thought, look down the nose a little bit at them, but I think this is going to be a really tough game as well. I think they're going to come with the fact that it's their chance to get through to a group stage and that they know what to expect now. But they've had some great nights in Tala, and hopefully for the league it's another one.
Absolutely. Barry, we know they have good players and we know they have quality. Look, is there any soft spots in them that you think Stephen Bradley might be thinking, if we probe this a little now, we might get more joy on Thursday?
The two centre halves are slow enough, to be fair. Venancio didn't play the other night. He was a substitute, or he wasn't even in the squad actually. so he must have been carrying an injury from the weekend. But bar their attacking three, Vinicius, Wenda will play. He didn't play the other night. Joe Costa played up top, and as you said, Silva on the wing. Bar their threats up front, they're fairly agricultural in the middle. You've got two holding midfielders in Coutinho in the middle. He was number 9. He was a good player, but didn't get on the ball enough for me. We're prepared to let Rovers have the ball, and as Graham said, Rovers have a way of playing in Europe now. Darren Nugent comes in and plays, and he doesn't play in the home legs in Europe. Doesn't play a lot of league games, but he kind of plays that Park Ji-sung type role. He's an individual who can kind of shore up a match for him when you play with that flat three in front of the back three as well. It's really hard to come up against, and Rovers would be disappointed with the goal they did concede because it's the first time they kind of had a foray into the Santa Clara half in the first kind of 15 minutes, and that's where they gave up the goal. A long ball out to the left, really good touch and a good finish. But apart that, I think Rovers were kind of sound enough in their defensive display, but I do think they caught them on the hop a little bit. You look at the start of the league form for them hasn't been good either. 2 losses on the bounce. They conceded 4 goals, and they were so tight last year. Only conceded 34 goals and had a 4-goal advantage in the goal difference. So it's all about kind of getting that 1 goal and keeping it tight for them. And they'll be in shocked by the way Rovers approach this, knowing that they're going into the second leg and do well in the second leg in Tallaght.
Yeah, what a huge night that's going to be in Tallaght. 8 o'clock kickoff there. And a huge night, Alan, in Belfast. Shelbourne take a 3-1 lead up there. Strangely, this one feels even sort of more predictable. Just that game was crazy. Like, it was, you have to give credit to Linfield, because I think that red card on 20 minutes, there was a feeling in the ground that this is a great chance to bury this tie tonight. Sort of in that sort of 5-10 minutes after that red, Shells seemed to freeze a little. Again, look, inexperience, talk about all that experience Shamrock Rovers have banked. This is new to Shelbourne. So maybe in those situations they froze a little bit, but then they get a lifeline with a penalty, then they miss that, they get another penalty. And it never lets up. It was wild. A 3-1 league, that's a healthy first leg lead, but the nature of that game makes you think anything could happen up there in Windsor Park.
Yeah, I'm heading up to the game, so I'm looking forward to it, to be honest with you, Anthony, but it was a crazy game. I don't think it'll be anything like what we saw last week, because there was so much talking points, if you like. And if you go back to the very first one, which probably the biggest of them all, was that red card after 20 minutes. Because if you contrast the start to this game compared to the one 4 or 5 weeks ago, Shelbourne came out of the traps 100 mile an hour, really put Linfield on the back foot. Linfield were out of season. It was their first competitive game, and you could see that. And they were hanging on for dear life for the first 20-25 minutes, right up to half time. This time, Anthony, the 5-6 games under their belt, competitive games, and they actually started the game quite well. Linfield had a little bit of a foothold, stringing passes together, made a couple of changes. Shields was obviously back as well in that central midfield area where we all know him from. So they actually started well, and then the red card kind of changed everything. I didn't think it was a red card straight away. Even looking back, I still don't think it was. I think Stewie described it as a modern day red card, if you like, which is probably fair, and especially in Europe, most referees might give it. But anyone that understands the game can see that Fitzpatrick is just trying to take a ball down that's over his shoulder. There's no intention to try and hurt the player. He's not going out to try and kind of make any impact on him, bang whatsoever. It's just a collision because of the nature of the position that he finds himself in. But the red was given, and it was a big loss because Fitzpatrick's a really good player as well, big centre forward. And the difference what they had this time, Linfield, they had a little forward off him in Offord, who's obviously scoring goals as well. So I felt after that 20 minutes up to the sending off, it was going to be a really tough night for Shelbourne. Once he gets sent off, of course, Shelbourne take control of the game, and that's the way it kind of played out up until the penalties. I was surprised Meepo took the first penalty, I have to be honest with you, Anthony, off the back of him just scrambling in the one against Rijeka last week. And he's not prolific, even though he does a lot of good things, more so out of the box, in the channels. He's not prolific. He takes a lot of chances to even score a goal. Misses the penalty, then you're thinking what's going to happen next. They get another one a couple of minutes later. Harry Wood, who was absolutely brilliant in that first half, he steps up. I thought he would have taken the first penalty, being honest, but he scores. And then you think Shelbourne, they can settle down. The big thing for me, bar the red card as well, and for people who might have missed it on the night, he made a substitution, Joey O'Brien, at half-time. Absolutely brilliant substitution, because Sam Bowen was finding himself in an outside left positions towards the latter part of that first half, getting on loads of ball. And no disrespect to Graham or any centre halves, you don't want your centre half on the ball in those outside left positions, building up the play or find himself in attacking areas. So he put Norris back there as a left-sided centre half in the second half at half-time, brought on Evan Caffrey, left wing-back, and a brilliant change, impacted the game straight away, got on loads of ball, very clever player. Evan could play right wing-back, left wing-back, midfield, and set up a goal straight away, and that was huge for them. But to be fair to Linfield, then you're thinking at 2-0, it's game over. They got a goal out of nothing, and then all of a sudden Shelbourne are on the back foot again, offered popping up at the back post. That gave them a lift as well, Anthony. I said for Shelbourne then were rattled for 10-15 minutes. Got themselves a penalty as well, Paddy Barrett, and you might question why he wasn't sent off. I think Linfield have fair argument there to ask why he wasn't sent off. But Offord, who you would fancy maybe to score because he was in good form, misses the penalty. I thought Shields may have taken the penalty. And then they get a reprieve, Shelbourne again. Then to take back control for the last 20 minutes, but you always felt as though they needed that third goal, especially going into the second leg. And Evan Caffrey, that man who was brilliant in the second half, pops up at the back post from a rebound from a shot from Odebeku. I felt it's the cushion they needed, Anthony. I still don't think they're over the line, but you would have to fancy they're 70-80% over the line now. But if they were to concede a goal in Windsor like they did the last day, and I was up at the game, they never put it to bed the second leg, the last day. It was a nervy finish for them. If that was the case and Linfield get the first goal, it's game on again. So even though I fancy Shelbourne to go through, I don't think it'll be as easy as the two goals cushion suggests.
Yeah, this is Joey O'Brien has said this a few times, Barry. It's treat European football as 4 halves of football, which that's what it is. But you can't get too carried away. It's only half time, but. We were speaking to David Healy after the game. He said it's paramount that we get the first goal. So Linfield are going to come out fast. Like, how can Shells use that to their advantage?
Well, it's such a massive pitch up there. Meepo, it's made for Meepo to get in behind. He's got speed. He's got the run on the centre halves as it is. But I think, as Alan said, it was a lot closer than we thought. We knew it might be in this round of games. The way they played 4 hard European games, so they've got a decent result, a decent record at home. Lost to the Faroese team and beat them at home 2-0. So it's definitely not done. But again, I've never seen the game fluctuate so much in terms of luck. Like, for me, it was a red card. I think you've got a duty of care as a player to kind of see your surroundings, and it's a brilliant bit of skill if he takes it down and there's no one around. But it's similar to the Nani one a few years ago, where they're playing Real Madrid, got sent off or something similar. So I think these things kind of are given in Europe, and I think Paddy Barrett's awfully lucky, obviously, to stay on the pitch as well, and that kind of luck was something you might get at home rather than up in Linfield. But I think Linfield's made some chances. Offord looks like a really good player as well, so you've just got to get him on the ball more. And I just think Shells can sit back a little bit, hit them on the counter attack, and it'll suit Shells going up there with that massive pitch to go and put the game to bed.
Well, we look forward to both those games. That one's at 7:45. Kicks off at 7:45. Linfield and Shelbourne at Windsor Park. Shamrock Rovers against Santa Clara at Tala is an 8 o'clock kickoff. Graham, just before we move on from Shamrock Rovers and Shelbourne, bit of interesting transfer news a couple of days ago. Victor Osimhen to Arsenal, first reported by Dan McDonnell in the Irish Independent. Victor is reportedly set to join in January 2027 when he turns 18, for a fee that's expected to surpass the £1.6 million that Spurs have paid for Mason Media. What can you tell us about Victor? I would say, looking at him, it's interesting that it's Arsenal that have come in from, because he actually profiles like something that would come out of Hale End. If you look at him and the way he plays and the qualities he has. What can you tell us about him?
Myself and Alan were actually talking about this yesterday. Victor came to us from St. Joseph's, but he's originally from Tala, and we brought him in and gave a presentation to his mum and dad. His dad's from Africa, his mum's from Russia. And he arrived up, we gave the presentation, but he arrived at the time, coming into Rovers, he arrived into a brand new Astro that was just made. We were in the middle of redoing the first team pitch, and we had just got planning permission to do a new 7-a-side pitch. So we were able to say to his mum and dad, look, he's going to play on this new 7-a-side pitch. So because we had the facilities and we were coming, we were able to it was an attraction for the likes of for the likes of players like him to come in, because we have built up this infrastructure. But when he first came in, we watched him play. He was excellent, like really low centre of gravity, like chopped and changed, used both feet, was willing to dribble, and he's still like that now. And he has a joy in how he plays, but he's fearless, and he's not arrogant, but he has a self-confidence in him that you think, right, you know, he can go on and achieve things, and he backs himself to take the ball. And I mentioned yesterday as well how brave he is. He will take the ball in tight spaces, and he's willing to play. And he's been a joy at the academy. And I remember saying to his mum and dad, look, this academy is built for all the kids. They can come up here whenever they want. And in fairness to him, he was there every day, whether his team was playing or not, or his team was training or not. And a lot of credit can go to a lot of things at Rovers in terms of the infrastructure that was put in place, and everybody who coached him, everybody's been around him. But ultimately the credit goes to him, because he's put in the work, and he has. In fairness to him, like I said to you, though, I was up there Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and on the Saturday, and he'd be there, whether his team were training or not. So he deserves all the credit. I know Alan was touching on it, saying he's not sure it's a good move going to Arsenal and whether it's the right decision. And again, that's the decision that him and his family have made. I look at the young players coming through at Arsenal, and they are given a chance. Whether he gets a chance ahead of them, that's up to Victor. I do think that, like, next year, if he has a full year next year playing at Rovers, he probably needs to be a regular, and he needs to start, and we need to see him playing every week at Rovers and becoming one of the main men. And similar to what Mason's done at Pats. Now Mason has 2 years on him, so Mason's 2 years older than him. But you'd hope that next year Victor can really go and become a mainstay in Rovers, with the hope that he gets a full year playing senior football before he goes to Arsenal. And that might put him ahead of the other kids that are around him in that age group, because he's played senior football for a full season. But again, full credit to him and his family, because he was a joy to be around. He, like I said, I coached him sporadically, and he was in my team sporadically at times, but just a wonderful player, and like you said, a really committed young professional.
Alan, what would your reservations be about Victor going to Arsenal?
Just in terms of the pathway that's there in front of him, Anthony, Arsenal are one of the best clubs in the world. You look at the money they've just spent in the off-season as well, and when you look at those positions where Victor plays, more so on the right, you look at a young fella, 15, an absolute superstar, made his debut at the weekend. Dowman, exceptional talent. Last year we had Nwaneri, another exceptional talent. So them two are ahead of him. Then you have Saka, who's one of the best in the world. So that's on the right-hand side. Martinelli, maybe there's question marks over him. Madueke, they've just spent 50 million on also. They've just brought Eze in, who'll probably play on the left, another 50-60 million pound player. So I just think in terms of the decision that young kids are making, I'd always look for maybe a pathway where you think you might play. Now, that's not to say the young kid won't go through if he's the exceptional talent everybody says. And it's not to put a downer on the move. I think it's brilliant for him and his family and all those things. But I just think people advising him and guiding him, maybe, I would certainly, and that's even from speaking to from my own experiences going to a top club that are spending money. It's always harder for a young kid, unless you're the exceptional talent, to come through, especially even more so now on a first team manager, the scrutiny that's under managers to get results. They're less likely to throw a young kid in to that environment, unless, as he says, he's a Dowman. Now, maybe Victor is, we don't know. But I also think, added to that, the 2-year gap that he is finding himself in now, that he's not going over until he's 18, I think is absolutely massive. Whereas years gone by, he would have been gone at 15, and he could be training with Arsenal's first team now if that was the case. He's going to miss out on that elite level training. That's not to say he's not getting at the Shamrock Rovers, and I'm sure he's in with the first team there, which is great experience for him. But again, like Graham said, I'd love to see him playing now if he's the exceptional talent that they're saying. He's only played in one cup game, I think. Now, that may change next year. Now that the deal is done, maybe he might play a lot more in Stephen Bradley's team, and hopefully that's the case and we see a lot more of him. But I just think you look at Arsenal at the moment fighting it out with Man City and Liverpool to win a Premier League, the talent that's in that squad, I would just question maybe where's the pathway for the kid. Hope to God in 2 years, 3 years time when he goes, we're sitting here and you're telling me, Anthony, he made his debut, and I'd be delighted for the kid. But I think they're fair questions to ask in terms of where a kid is going. And it's great, and I'm sure, I suppose, that one little add-on to that is if he is going to Arsenal, which he is, and things don't work out, maybe the fallback is not as big as what it might be if you start at a lesser club. That's fair as well for if anyone wants to say that he might drop down to a Championship, League One, wherever. But I just think in terms of, I just think it's all about playing. I think if you're 18, 19, 20 going somewhere, I think you have to be looking to say, am I going to play in this team? And I think that's the plus point of the Brexit, that lads that do go at 18, 19, 20 now, from years ago, I think managers are more inclined to look at them playing in our league now and put them into a first team environment and think he could play in my first team, rather than years ago, 15, 16, you're still going into it. So there's pluses and minuses to everything, Anthony, and there's ways of looking at things. I just think for the kid in terms of a pathway at Arsenal, it's a tough one. Yeah, but good luck to the kid. As I said, it's not to put a dampener on it whatsoever. It's good luck to the young fella.
Okay, let's have a look at some of the LOI action then over the weekend. Barry, we're going to start at Drogheda. It's a lonely life being a goalkeeper. You can be brilliant, as Luke Dennison has been all season, but he's the man in the firing line. It's his mistake. Doesn't lead directly to the winner, we should say. It leads to the corner that leads to the winner. Against St. Patrick's Athletic, a game that looked like it was heading for a 0-0 draw, which would have been the fourth goalless draw between those two teams this season. But a tough time for him. What was your take on the error? He tries to throw the ball out quickly, Mason Melia intercepts it. Kevin Doherty is furious because ultimately it leads to that goal. But what did you make it? Was it a huge error, or was it just because it almost gets to the player? I can't recall what draw the player it was, or was that just straight up a bad decision by Dennison?
Yeah, and it inevitably always needs to a goal. You're always kind of hoping for the next 1 or 2 minutes to pass by without any events happening after you do something like that, and it's just a rush of blood to the head. But for me, it's the manner of the distribution. It's the two hands over the head, launching it that way. It's always going to be intercepted. And to be fair to Mason Melia, he's read it really well. He's ran 10 or 15 yards to win it back. Won the tussle and won it back. But you've also got a corner to defend. But he's kind of compounded the error by not dealing with the ball into the box as well. And I think that's probably where the frustration is for Kevin. The ball bounces in the box before it's headed home by Turner. But you can see it from Kevin straight away. You're going, just get a point here and you stay 4 clear of Pats. You can see where Luke is coming from. A couple of weeks ago, you've got the counter-attack against Bowes, and Josh Keeley Conor Keeley plays a brilliant ball through the centre and opens them up, and they win 1-0. It's a fantastic 3 points, and you're thinking, can we counter St. Pat's as well? They're trying to get a winner. We're in the 95th minute. Can we go and nick all 3 points? And you just think to yourself, just hold on to it. But it is just a little bit of rush of blood to the head. And the only thing, he's been so good this year, Dennison, as well, but the only thing you question is maybe his distribution a little bit off the ground and in hand. Otherwise, he's been phenomenal since he's come in. His experience in the box, coming and claiming things, the saves he's made, he's probably won the most amount of points for his team this season in terms of saves made. But again, just one rush of blood to the head, and as a goalkeeper, it's nearly always punished.
Graham, I don't know if you've ever been in this sort of situation, like where you make a mistake like that, because it leads to the corner. There's a reaction from the crowd. There's a reaction from Kevin Doherty on the line. It looks like it really affects Dennison. It actually looks like it affects Drogheda defensively, because they're not set up well for the corner. They're known for how well they defend these situations. I think even his attempt to make the save from Luke Turner, I know it's very close range, but it just looks like his head went. Like, maybe, like, you can understand the manager's frustration, but like, was it the right situation to react there and then to his goalkeeper before they defended that corner?
Yeah, I think he got booked, didn't he, as well, for going down the line. And he was saying he was trying to give out to his goalkeeper. I agree with Barry. I think a two-handed throw like that, I think he has to throw that sidearm and favour the sideline more. And if it goes out of play, it goes out of play, rather than trying to be a bit too accurate with it. You just hit the grass in front of you, and if you chase it over the sideline, it's a throw-in. And like you said, Barry, you can touch on, well, we tried to counter-attack because that's what we do, but we favoured, we had a safety net, which is the sideline to throw it towards. But again, that's where you need that calmness in that moment, is to say, look, it's gone. Now it's up to the defenders and the lads defending to get his goalkeeper out of trouble. And to be honest, if I'm marking a centre forward or if I'm marking someone from a set piece and he gets a run at me and he gets a header, I'm thinking, right, I hope my goalkeeper gets me out of trouble. And the same has to work both ways, and that's why it's so important that your goalkeeper and your defenders work as a unit there. But you have to be thinking, look, you made a mistake, relax, we'll get you out of it, we'll go and head the ball. And that's where I think Drogheda could have defended it better. I get Kevin's frustration, like we shouldn't be having to defend the corner here. We had the ball in the goalkeeper's hands, but again, that's what happens, and you can't. You just have to manage the situation that's in front of you, and just go and hit the ball. Like you said, 2 weeks ago, he's a hero. He's got them through to the next round of the FAI Cup, and the lads are loving him, and then they're probably a bit disappointed in him, but you just have to pull him through then as defenders. But yeah, like I can understand Kevin's frustration on it, and I think he's more along the lines of, look, you've been doing really well, don't ruin it, don't get ahead of yourself a little bit as well, and I get that too. Like, so it's just about realising what Drogheda are, and look, they've a clear identity of what they want to do. They're well drilled, they defend really well, they're dangerous on the counter attack, and other teams complain about how they play, but just beat them. Don't complain about it. Just go out and try and beat them. And if you can't, then be quiet. Like, and in all honesty, like, Drogheda are working within their means. It's their first year full time, and they're having a great season. To the point where they're disappointed that they lose a game to Pats, who will probably have double their budget. So it just shows you how far they've come in the last couple of seasons. Bear in mind, this is a Drogheda team that's set up by a playoff. You know what I mean? So they've been doing incredibly well, and full credit to Kevin because he's done a great job. But you could see his disappointment in that. But it's just one of those things that it comes down to decision making. But once he makes a bad decision, you just need to move on a little bit quicker.
Yeah, we should always remember, Alan, as Graham says there, they are overachieving Drogheda, and they lost Douglas James Taylor, who starred for Bohemians in their 3-0 win against Cork City. He's really added another dimension to the attack there. The likes of Dawson Devoy and Tierney, they look good, Alan, and they needed that. I think, having crashed out of the cup against Sligo Rovers up to second. Now, Alan Reynolds said that first half was the best he's seen in his time at the club. Maybe just clicking in time for a good finish to the end of the year and make sure they stay in those European places.
Yeah, big win. I think it was more a big response, to be honest with you, Anthony. I was in the week before in the cup game against Sligo Rovers, and they were very, very poor. And that's one that you look at realistically thinking we could win the cup this year. Bohemians are capable of beating anyone on their day, including Shamrock Rovers, as we've seen over the course of the season. So I think that's what would have disappointed the people in Bohemians more so than anything the week before. Credit to Sligo Rovers, who played very well on the night, but a home tie against Sligo Rovers, they would have been fancying their chances. So it was so important and imperative that they got the response. I suppose you might look at it and think it was a favourable fixture to have at home to Cork. I know Cork have had a little upturn prior to that game, and they were unbeaten in 3 going into it, so you're thinking it may be difficult, as every game is difficult, but it was a favourable tie to have at home. And they ran out easy winners in the end. I think listening to the interviews with the managers afterwards, certainly the Cork manager felt as though that they played quite well in the second half and they caused a few problems for Bohemians. So maybe the 3-0 score flattered them. I spoke to people who were in at the match, and although Alan Reynolds said it was the best they played, they didn't feel that whatsoever, to be honest with you, Anthony. So look, managers can dress it up whatever which way they want, what they want. The most important thing is they got the victory. I think the phrase that Alan Reynolds used was getting back on track. They certainly are back on track. And when you think this was a manager, I was at the game in Tala when they were 2 down, and he was out the door, Anthony. Believe me, he was gone. I was sitting in the stand saying there is no way back from this. He is out the door. And I'd say he knew it himself if you were to speak to Alan Reynolds. The fans were even joining in with the Shamrock Rovers chant, which was so wrong that day. But that's how far out the door he was gone. So to turn it around from there and find himself second position now, 7 points behind Shamrock Rovers, he would have snapped their hand off for that. He would have snapped their hand off just to be in the job, I'd say, that day. So they have turned things around. I still think they have the makings of a good team. They're building quite nicely. Devoy, for me, is probably the best player in the league this year. I think he's an outstanding talent, Dawson Devoy. And And even though they're 7 points behind Shamrock Rovers, I still think Shamrock Rovers are well ahead of them, as you would expect, in terms of their development, Stephen, building that team over the years. This is effectively Alan Reynolds' first year with his full team, full squad, if you like. So they're building nicely. If they get into those European positions, and they're well placed to do that now, Anthony, I think that will be a good season for Bohemians. As I said, they'll be disappointed off the cup one, but once they finish in those kind of top 3 positions, I think they'll take that and then strengthen again maybe, and mount a challenge next year, a proper title challenge next year. I think that'll be a good return for Alan Reynolds this year.
They need to get defenders in. They still have a lot of fullback. They still have a lot of midfielders playing in fullback positions. Flores, Morahan plays in at right back sometimes as well. And I sometimes think they can be got at in them areas. Obviously, they brought Rob Cornwall back, but I still think they need more defenders. I know Douglas James Taylor was the big one to get a centre forward in, because they had a lot of build-up play and lacked a bit of cutting edge. But for them, and I agree with Alan, I think they're coming along. They'd be so disappointed going out of the cup. I think they're coming along nicely and building a really good squad. But I do think you need good defenders at vital times in games. And when you have lads who probably aren't natural defenders and playing in full-back positions, all it takes is one chance from a good winger to get down the line and put a cross in, and you're in trouble. So for me, if they are going to strengthen, they need to bring in a lot of reinforcements in their back line if they are going to try. And again, people keep saying, "Oh, we weren't meant to be in the title challenge this year." I get that, but every year you build towards something. You're building towards challenging. To build towards challenging, you need to start going and winning certain games that you're expected to win and performing. But to get towards that, they do need help in defensive positions, I feel.
Barry, just quickly as well on Derry City's win at Galway United, a 2-1 win. The enigma that is Derry City, because they frustrate, I think, neutrals even, along their own supporters, in terms of like this sort of stop-start nature of, you think they're going to take off and then they suffer a bad defeat. But they did show character there. They were down to 10 men and they nicked a goal from Adam O'Reilly in stoppage time. That leaves them third. I mean, how would you assess Derry to this point? Is there evidence that they are going in the right direction and that things can knit together? Or what do you make of it?
No, I don't think there is evidence of it. I think it was a one-off result that's probably saved a lot of blushes over the last couple of weeks. I think all isn't well up there with Tiernan Lynch, and you've got to get the fans on side there. When you leave, there's a couple of bases you need to hit with Derry City. You've got to have young local lads in the team. I need to replace them with kind of players from lower leagues in England coming in and taking positions. You look at Stott the other night getting sent off as well, and you just think the lads that he's brought in haven't had the desired effect. And Roland Boyce not playing on the right. Boyce didn't play the other night, and you just look at the other night. They played around a little bit, trying to be over kind of complicated with the way they played, and as soon as they went back to front fairly quick, that's where the goal came from. A really good goal in the end, but they did show good quality in the end to get that result, because it's a really tough place to go, and Galway are in all sorts of trouble. And you look at Adam O'Reilly, he's been playing as a right wing back all season, totally out of position, has been really poor in that position, and he's taken Ronan Boyce's position there, and it's an interesting one that the fans have kind of been on the back a little bit of Tiernan Lynch about it, but comes up at the goal then the other night to get a massive 3 points from him. But for me, I'm not seeing any sort of progression. I'm not seeing any kind of real style or pattern or play that you can go, this is what they're trying to do, a real identity. It's kind of just little stopgaps at the moment, players in, players out. And you just look at even 5 or 6 weeks ago when they went on that run, Kevin Holt is in at centre back, then suddenly he's gone left, the place falls to bits. Can't buy a clean sheet from then on. So for me, it's just about getting that European spot at the moment, because he really can't afford another year and not getting into it. And I just think that things aren't well between even the management and the upper echelons. I think there was something going on with Kieran Harkin and going to Sligo Rovers as well. He wanted to get out the door. The manager wouldn't give him an answer, and he had to go to the ownership to get that answer and get that move on deadline day. So stuff like that doesn't bode well in terms of a lineage from manager up to the hierarchy of the club. So it doesn't look right for me.
We were up there actually last week, Anthony, the Cup game. Barry's 100% right in everything that he said there. They had 14 players who've come into the club, 9 at the start, 5 in the window. Now, this is a team, bear in mind, who should have won the league last year. They should have probably won the Cup as well, you could argue. So there wasn't a whole lot wrong in terms of what was going on in Derry. They just couldn't get over the line in those big competitions. But a new manager to walk in the door, and I get that you want to put your own imprint on it or your own style, bring in your own player, but to make 14 changes is off the charts for me. Like, it's crazy stuff. And I think the evidence that we're seeing now is he doesn't even know his best 11. He's chopping and changing left, right and centre. As Barry said, there's discontent amongst the crowd. I always remember, as the lads will, the Brandywell was one of the best places to go in terms of an atmosphere and a crowd. Even though it was one of the toughest places, you used to love playing there because the crowd were right on top of you, and it was a brilliant, brilliant atmosphere. We were up there last week for the cup game, and it was probably one of the most comfortable nights Drogheda will ever have. There was half-empty stadium, discontent amongst the crowd, murmurings going on left, right and centre. The local players, as Barry says, Boyce, who's a very good player for me, not playing. Ben Doherty, who's had a great season last year, not playing. They brought in a new lad, Fleming, who's a decent enough player on the left, but I'd have Ben Doherty ahead of him, no problem with what I seen last year. Adam O'Reilly, who's full of energy, full of life, gets the crowd going, if you like, playing right wing back. So some of the decisions, and as I said, normally something like what I said with Alan Reynolds in terms of they're in their infancy and building, and you have to allow a manager a time. On Tiernan Lynch, and I get that he's only in the door and you have to kind of treat everybody the same in that regard. I just think there wasn't a whole lot wrong with them. He walked into a very good job. He didn't walk into a job where it needed loads of wholesale changes and build something new. There was a lot right going on there, and I felt if it was managed properly, they could really build and go and put up a sustained challenge against Shamrock Rovers this year. The inconsistency is killing them, but a lot of the inconsistency I feel is coming from the decisions he's making as well.
But in terms of even building, Anthony, like the lads are spot on about, like, you're trying to build something that's going to challenge. They're still signing all their players. You know what I mean? So they're in a win now mentality, and if you're going to win now, you have to perform. And as Barry and Alan touched on, they're not performing. You know, so you're bringing in these experienced players. They have to hit the ground running. The one thing that young players gives you is time that you can say, look, we're building towards something like what Bohemians are trying to do. But that's the bit with Derry is they're in a win now mentality, but they're not performing, and that's what's hurting them as well. So everything the lad said is spot on there, and what their identity is, I don't know in terms of how they play or what they're trying to build. I just don't see it.
Before we have a very quick chat about the Ireland squad announcement tomorrow, I just want to ask you about Sligo. Another good win for them at Waterford, and you know they're up turning form. There's a few good performers recently for them. McLean at the back has been good for them. Kiki got a goal on Friday, but specifically want to ask about Owen Elding, just because of the excitement that type of player brings, I think, to a club. A young guy's been there since he was a kid. How good is he, Alan? How good is this chap, and how far do you think he can go in the game?
Yeah, I'm fussy, Anthony, and I'm mad about him. So that'll tell you. I think how good he is. Yeah, he's a brilliant, brilliant player. And what I love more so than anything else, and yes, he's getting a lot of the plaudits now off the back of the brilliant performances and the goals. But I remember when they were struggling earlier on in the season, like really struggling, and you're kind of it's looking bleak and grim. And he was still a young kid, grabbing them by the scruff of the neck and showing such leadership qualities and a maturity about him as well, in trying to drag them back into games that he should never have been doing as a young kid. So it means a lot to him playing for Sligo Rovers, as you said, coming up through the ranks. I spoke to Conor Grady's the youth development officer there, and asked him just in terms of his attitude and his character, what he's like as a young kid. Said unbelievable, one of the most hard-working players. I've spoken since to Ryan Casey, John Russell about him. They're mad about him, as you would expect as a player, but they're mad about him more so about his attitude as well. And I think we can see that in the games. Yes, he scores the goals. Yes, he does some really brilliant things as a footballer, but he never stops running, Anthony. He's a brilliant, brilliant attitude. He's sometimes playing off the right. He's asked to play through the middle. He might be on the left. Never moans, never complains, just gets on with it. You see him doing the work and the effort. And I have to say I'm mad about the kid. I think he's been absolutely brilliant all season. I think he has 10 league goals now. He's challenging for the top scorer, three assists as well. Of course, everybody is after him now, and he will go eventually, and good luck to the kid. I hope to choose right. I hope to get the right money for him, which I think is probably the only thing that's outstanding now at the moment is how much they'll get for him. I don't think there's any question in terms of him going away, which he'll be a loss to Sligo. But the people of Sligo will only wish him well. He's been absolutely fantastic, Anthony. And the upturn in their fortunes is largely down to him, I'd have to say, because he's been the game changer. But you're right about McLean has made a big difference since he's come in. Hikiki's done well. The goalkeeper has had an unbelievable turnaround as well. Sargent, he was getting severely criticised at the start as well. And I think he even said it in a recent interview, because he's just signed a new contract, about basically having to change maybe the training methods that he was using as well, and getting himself a little bit more fitter. And he's been brilliant. So I think John Russell deserves a lot of credit as well. They're still not out of the mire, Anthony. They're still second bottom. But in terms of the momentum, and you look at Galway just ahead of them and Waterford, all the momentum is with Sligo, and there's good vibes around the place. Where Galway losing again the other night, I think that's 6 defeats out of 8 in the league, so they're really struggling. So I would fancy Sligo to get out of this. But in terms of young Elding, a brilliant young talent, and I love to watch him.
Yeah, he's doing really well, and it's great to watch indeed. Let's just quickly talk about the Ireland squad announcements. Heimir Hallgrimsson will name the squad for the World Cup qualifiers against Hungary and Armenia tomorrow, as we record this podcast on Monday. He will announce it on the Tuesday. It's been a pretty good weekend in terms of Evan Ferguson in Roma, giving us all a burst of nostalgia, like being so invested in Serie A again. It's a bit of a throwback to the 90s. Great to see that. Brentford and their very heavy Irish presence getting a win under the belts. Josh Cullen scored a goal and getting an assist for Burnley. Had a great game for Burnley in their win against Sunderland. Graham, I'll ask you about one of the players that did well in the summer friendlies, Killian Phillips, because I think you were watching him play for St Mirren against Rangers. How did he do?
He done really well. He done a great job on Rangers in the first half. They're the better team. They were 1-0 up. Rangers made a lot of changes in the second half. A young lad, Curtis, came on and scored. But for 70 odd minutes, St Mirren were the better team. They outfought them. They outplayed them. How they matched up against them was great. And in fairness to them, he plays midfield with a lad, Mark O'Hara, who I coached when he was younger as well. And the two of them are really, really leggy and really aggressive, and they get around the pitch. And that's the aggression that Rangers just couldn't handle. And it's his willingness to run. That's the bit that you have a lot of good players that want to get on the ball, and he can play as well, but it's that willingness to go and run and get the ball back to his team. And then he causes trouble in the opposition box. And all round, look, obviously Rangers pushed for the last 15 minutes and got the equaliser, but they done well to get a point out, because St Mirren were the better side for majority of the game. But again, he's gone up there permanently. He's going to have a go, and like, yeah, he's more than capable. Like, you see, Scales is up there playing for Celtic. Jay McGrath has gone to Hibs, and they're fashioning careers for themselves up in Scotland. And look, Celtic or Rangers aren't probably doing great this season. Hibs are doing really well, so it'll be interesting to see if Jamie McGrath does and if he goes in the squad, because there was a time he was in a lot of squads and he has the potential to go again. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't think he's doing himself any harm. And it goes back to what the lads touched on. They're going out and playing football, and you can only make an impact if you're playing. And that's the thing with Killian. He's gone up there. He's playing every week, and he's playing against good sides like the likes of Rangers. It's on Sky Sports yesterday, and he'll come up against Celtic, and all eyes will be on him. And that's more can be said for some of the lads who aren't playing, and that's all you can do as a professional footballer.
Barry, I'm just thinking in terms of League of Ireland representation, do you think we'll see Josh Honohan in that squad tomorrow?
I think we'll see him in the provisional squad. I don't think he'll make the final squad. You just look at the two kind of left back and left wing back, Manning and O'Dowd, the way they've been playing. I think he'll just go with that kind of experience that's there already. Robbie Brady's obviously gone down injured now, so it probably brings him that step closer. But in terms of, like, if you're going to bring him in, I see the benefit of having James Coleman there, obviously, as a captain and a leader, the experience they have. But if you're not going to involve him in games, I could see Josh Honohan filling that position and having Coleman in around the squad. I just think Josh has been so good in Europe that he warrants a place, definitely in the provisional squad, if not the final squad. But I just don't think he'll make the final cut at this stage.
Alan, it's stating the obvious. Just looking ahead to these games, they're only a couple of weeks away, but like, you're desperate for Ireland to make a good start in a campaign. They've got Hungary at home. We know Hungary are a good side. They are a good side. They got really top players, and then away to Armenia. But you're just thinking, getting Hungary first up at home in a full Aviva, it is a really, really good opportunity to finally get some momentum. You're going back 3 or 4 campaigns to think about, like, when Ireland started well and got out with the blocks. Usually it's done by game week 3 or 4. So it's just so important, isn't it, for Hallgrimsson and for Ireland to get that first win against the Hungarians and straight out the blocks.
Yeah, it's a huge couple of weeks coming up, Anthony, and one I'm very much looking forward to. And I think, to be fair to Heimir, I've liked everything that he's done since he's come in. He's been very real, very honest in the way he's spoken as well. I think he comes across well in the media, which is an important part of it nowadays as well in the job. And as you say, now we're building up to those games. It'll be over in a flash, because I think it's over by October, November time as well. So you'll have the 6 games quite quickly. But it's so important that we just want to feel like we're in the campaign, that you're in the fight, Anthony. That's all you want. You don't want to be knocked out in the first round, the first game. You want to feel like you're in the fight. And I think the crowd would really get behind them if that's the case. I think there'll be a great atmosphere that night against Hungary, as you say, the opening night at home. Even though it's a tough game, I think it's a winnable game. And we have to be looking at it like that. And coming off the back, as you say, of a good weekend where a lot of the lads played as well, they'll be well ready to go on that opening night as well. And the start of every campaign, you have hope and optimism. Like, we're not coming in on a downer. There's lots of hope and optimism that this can be the one that we can really make our mark. So hopefully that's the case. All eyes will be on the squad that he will name. It was great to see Evan play the other night. Looked the fittest and sharpest I've seen him in a long time, Anthony. He looked really good. Just his kind of physical condition looked really, really good. So he's coming in on a high as well, whereas previously to that, a lot of lads were coming in with their heads down. The win for the boys at Brentford as well. So hopefully that's a good sign of things to come. And as I said, it's such a huge week. We have a huge week this week, obviously, with the domestic things. If that was to go well, then you have a huge week with the international team. All of a sudden, in 2 or 3 weeks' time, it would be great to be looking back on these things, thinking there's a bit of a silver lining amongst Irish football and stuff to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, and let's hope that the feel-good momentum starts this week with those 2 big European games on Thursday night. We'll leave it there. Thanks a lot to Alan, to Barry and to Graham for joining us. We're now going to be joined by Rachel Graham to look ahead to Athlone Town's massive Champions League game on Wednesday against Breidablik of Iceland. So we'll say farewell to the lads and thank them again for their time. Thanks, lads.
Thank you.
Okay, we are very happy now to be joined by Rachel Graham to reflect on all the action in the women's Premier Division over the weekend. Plenty of twists and turns there for us to sort of chew over. And we'll also be looking ahead to this Sunday's All-Ireland Cup final between Wexford and Bohemians. I think we'll start with Athlone Town's Champions League mission this week. Rachel, they flew to the Netherlands today as we record this podcast on a Monday. They face Breidablik of Iceland on Wednesday lunchtime. That's a midday kickoff Irish time in the Netherlands in the round 2 qualifier semi-final. Of course, they breezed through that round 1 qualifier against Cardiff City and then Agram of Croatia. They were comfortable. They looked strong. This, of course, is a different level again. It's going to be really tough. I mean, even if they were to overcome Breidablik on Wednesday, they then play either FC20 or Red Star in Saturday evening's final, which will be tougher again. But I think, like I was speaking to you a couple of weeks ago, you were relatively optimistic about Athlone's chances, at least on Wednesday against Breidablik. Breidablik absolutely flying in the Icelandic League. They're top of the league. They're scoring an average of 4 goals a game. But I think, Rachel, you thought Athlone have at least they're equipped with the physicality to not be bullied, not be easily turned over here. Are you still sticking with that?
Yeah, I think so. And look, it's kind of hard to know. Like you said, we're just going off the stats of the Icelandic League, and it's hard to find clips and stuff. So you're just going by what there is kind of on paper at the moment. And like you said, they've scored 61 goals in 15 games, which is, it's huge. So they're obviously able to score goals, and they haven't conceded a lot either. But I'm just going off the kind of time that we would have played an Icelandic team. And I don't feel like, they weren't like much better players than us, but they just had that physical side of the game that, we were really lacking at the time. And it was just the fitness levels and, the pace, the power they had. And I think if you look at Lown's team now, like they would have that a lot more in their team than we would have had the team that played against the Icelandic team. I think it was 3 years ago now, maybe 2 years ago. So I do give them a chance. It's not that these players are much more talented than us or much more technically gifted. It's just we've probably always fallen a little bit behind in that physical side of the game. So I think if you look at Lown's team, they're all fit, they're all quick. They have Manny Gibson, Roisin Malloy on the 2 wings, and Kelly Brady up front, who's probably the quickest player in the league. So they'll have that to deal with as well. So Look, I'd definitely give them a chance. It's obviously going to be tough, but I don't think that's something that's unachievable by them. And look, I think if they do come through that game, it's obviously a huge ask. It's probably most likely going to be the Netherlands team that they will face, and to kind of get yourself back, 2 days recovery, it's a big ask. And if you look at that, FC20 team, they played in the group stage of the Champions League last year and played against Chelsea, Real Madrid, and look, they had heavy defeats against both teams, but they also had narrow defeats against both teams and beat Celtic twice. So they're obviously, at a really good level. Now they haven't started their league yet, so that's the only kind of maybe weak link that they would have at the moment. But even, their most probably recognisable player is Jill Ward at the moment. She, we'd know her from the WSL. She played for Arsenal, Man City, and has played for the Netherlands as well. So, it's not as if she's coming to the end of her career and she's gone there to finish out her last year or two. She's only 28 and, in the peak of her powers almost. So I think that's the level that you're going to be looking at if we do come through this game on Wednesday. But look, I'm really intrigued to see how it goes. I think they have a good chance on the Wednesday, but it's, if they do get through that, it's, even with just 2 days recovery, that's a huge ask to play against such a tough team. So look, I'm intrigued to see how they do. I know they're representing Athlone Town, obviously, but it's also kind of representing the league and see where we are against these other leagues. So look, really intrigued to see how it goes for them.
Yeah, I mean, as you referenced there, Rachel, Colin Fortune will obviously be doing his best to get some information on these. It is difficult still. Like, how do you approach these kind of games where you're going in? This isn't the women's Premier Division where you're very familiar with the opposition. Like, is it a case of just sort of taking that first 15, 20 minutes of the game, sizing them up, staying in it, nothing silly, and then go from there? Is it as simple as that?
Look, I think they'll probably be able to get footage. If you have access to Y-Scout, you'll be able to see any team. It's hard to get it on YouTube or anything like that. So look, they probably do have footage. They've seen what they're about. But like you said, you have to be clever in these kind of games. And look, if you are the underdog, just kind of accept it and maybe have to change your game plan. Obviously, Athlone here are, top of the table at the moment. So they're best team in Ireland at the moment. So they can approach any game kind of how they want. They play their best football. But if it is a case where you are the underdog and maybe it is a case of sitting in, soaking up a bit of pressure and trying to catch them, you just do it. And like you said, keep yourself in the game as long as possible. Don't concede early. Don't do anything silly. Give yourself the best chance. Be in the game still at half time if you can. So look, like I said, I don't think it's anything that they need to be too fearful of. But if it is a case of maybe, look, we will be under more pressure than we are used to playing in the Women's League of Ireland, you just accept it and you set yourselves up to deal with it.
Yeah, Athlone are indeed top of the table, and they are top after a 2-1 win over Shelbourne. Natalie McNally and Kelly Brady with the goals for Athlone. Gemma Quinn saw red for Shells. Noelle Murray got a goal at the death. Any complaints, Rachel? How did you assess, I guess, Shelbourne's performance, but also Athlone? No sense that they were taking their eye off the ball. It was a big, big game. Bread and butter is the league, of course. And they performed.
Yeah, they definitely did. I think it was kind of a game of two different halves. I think the first half they were, look, by far the better team, and they had us under a lot of pressure. But look, I thought for all the pressure we were under, we defended the box really well, but probably again disappointed in the goals that we conceded. And the first one's from a corner, and it's nearly like the fourth phase off a ball. It's kind of half headed clear, and then it's half cleared, and it's ricocheted off someone, and look, it just falls to McNally, and she, makes no mistake about it, puts in the back of the net. And the second one, then it's probably, hindsight's always a great thing. It's, maybe Leah can just put it out for a corner, out for a throw in. We just, defend that throw in. But like I said, hindsight's a great thing. It's easy to say that now. But look, I think for all the pressure that we are under, it's disappointing the goals that we did give away. But look, I think, they were far better than us in the first half, and I don't think 2-0 flattered them at all. And then look, we made a couple of changes at half time, and I felt that kind of swung the game a bit, and we were then the better team in the second half, and thought we were unlucky, not to go 2-1, to get 2-1 soon into the second half. It was a really tight offside call and got a goal disallowed, and that would have really kind of given us a lot of time to get the second goal. But I think unfortunately we just left it too late to claw back 2 goals against a team that just aren't conceding a lot of goals at the moment. And like you said, Noelle gets a goal, I think it was like 92nd minute, and I think we maybe 5 or 6 minutes after that to try and get a second, but just couldn't find it. But yeah, look, it's kind of like we're making stuff hard for ourselves. It's giving away cheap goals, and then Gemma Quinn gets a red card. Probably she's looking back at it now, thinking it's a silly decision, and now Kate Keane looks to have got a bad injury as well, so that's another blow for us at the moment. So You know, she got a scan yesterday and waiting to see, but you know, it doesn't really look good from her reaction in the game and the pain that she was in. So that's another blow we'll have to deal with. But look, I think overall Athlone were probably the better team, and like you said, we probably lost it in the first half. The damage was done, but you know, a lot of football still to be played, and still only a point in it. So look, we won't feel sorry for ourselves. It's well, you still have something to do about it. You still have time to rectify it. You can't be feeling sorry for yourself, crying about these things.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, still second. Wexford did have an opportunity to put a bit of heat on his Rachel, but they were beaten 1-0 by Trinity United. Katie Lawley's goal and the stroke of half time settled that. Trinity are up to fifth and maybe coming to the ball nicely just in terms of you think they're still in the cup as well, of course. But yeah, Wexford they'll be stinging after that, Rachel. You know, that was a chance, as I said, to kind of just get closer to second and get themselves into the mix a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm sure like they were probably looking at this weekend as this is a great opportunity for us to close that gap. And obviously us playing against that loan, someone was dropping points and they had a chance to go within 2 points of us or 3 points of that loan, the way it worked out. And, you know, they didn't take the chance. They lost 1-0 to Treaty. And I think again the goal they gave away probably disappointed with it's, you know, it's a ball into the box and it's tried to be headed clear. And I don't know, it looks kind of like it's almost like she lost the flight of the ball. I don't know if the sun was in her eyes and she just heads it straight to Katie Lawley, who is pretty much on the goal line. She's not going to miss for there. So I think that's probably, you know, they're kicking themselves a bit. That was a great opportunity for them to look. I don't think they're out of the title race or anything like that, but that would have been a huge 3 points to get themselves back up closer to us on that loan.
But what about Treaty then, Rachel? You know, they just seem to be one of these teams on their day. They're gonna cause anyone problems. And they are moving pretty well.
Yeah, they are definitely. And look, they've been like that the past couple of years as well. But this is their probably best year, I would say. This is the best team they've had. And like we spoke about kind of individual players for them, like Flacchini up front or in the 10, she's getting a lot of goals. She's playing really well. She won the free kick that they scored from against Wexford. So she's definitely a big handful. Katie Lawley, she's a young player. I think she's only 18, 19. She's really, coming good. And they have a couple of others, Robbins as well. And look, they've really invested. I think Treaty, they've brought in a lot of kind of overseas players and have really, invested a lot of money into getting these players over and really pushing themselves. So look, they're in a great position. Maybe not for the league. I think that's probably gone too far. But I think even to get to an FAI Cup final, is huge for them and somewhere they've never been before. And I wouldn't even write them off winning if they do get to the final. So I think that's obviously their focus now. And I think when you do focus on that way, you just, focus on the league of getting yourself in good form and, winning's a bit of a habit and keeping yourself winning going into these cup games. So look, yeah, like you said, they're not no means an easy team. They're definitely a team that's gotten better over the last couple of years, but I think this is probably the best that we've seen them since they've come into the league.
Yeah, potentially a coming force. One of the traditional forces, Peamount United had a good week. They bet Bowls 2-1 last Tuesday. That ended a 9-match unbeaten run for Bowls. Ellen Dolan got 2 goals in that game. They followed that up with a 2-0 win at Cork City, thanks to goals from Auntie Gugo and Eleanor Ryan Doyle. That unbelievably, really, the game against Bowls, Rachel, that was Peamount's first win in the league since the middle of May. Now look, it's that 6 points hooshes them up to 8th, but they'll be frustrated with this campaign. Like, what is it that's been so I guess inconsistent, maybe doesn't even quite cut it, because that's quite underwhelming for Peamount. They would have bigger ambitions and be scrambling around 7th, 8th position at this part of the season, wouldn't they?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like this is a team that won the league 2 years ago, and now they're finding themselves, going from May to August without winning a game. So, look, I think it's like you said, it's been a frustrating season for them, and look, only for the game against us, the loss against us, and the loss against Athlone, all of their losses have been by 1 goal. So it's not like they're getting hammered. It's just they just cannot find a way to keep a clean sheet or get that crucial equaliser or a crucial goal. But look, I think they've had disappointing results against teams that they would be expecting to beat. They've lost to DLR, lost to Sligo, and look, I don't think any game is a given and any game is easy. But I mean, if you look at the players they have, that's a game that they should be winning. So, like, I think they've slipped up in those kind of games and then probably just can't find that kind of extra 5-10% in the games that they are narrowly losing to pull themselves back into. But look, I think, a player we probably haven't spoke about, and when we do speak about the young players, we haven't really mentioned it, Ellen Dowell, and she's, huge for Peamount. And I think she was injured at the start of the season, but she seems to be back fit now, and like she was the one that got the 2 goals against Bows, and not even to get the 2 goals, she missed a penalty early into the second half, and mentality didn't drop. She didn't want to go hiding or feel sorry for herself. She got a goal then, I think it was only a couple of minutes after that, and then she gets the winner then 5 minutes later again. So I think for someone so young to have such a good mentality, almost showing leadership skill at that age, it's huge. And she's probably someone that you might see, I think, going across the water in the next couple of years, because she's a huge talent, and she's shining in that female team at the moment.
Yeah, let's chat a little bit about Galway Bowls as well, Rachel. We will touch more on Bowls when we look towards the All-Ireland Cup final. As I said, they were on a 9-game unbeaten run before they lost to Plymouth. Then they lost 2-1 against Galway United. Amanda Smith won that right at the end. Galway are fourth though, only a point behind Wexford. A team that has those All-Ireland Cup, a couple of All-Ireland Cup victories under their belt. Maybe you would have anticipated they'd be a little closer in terms of challenging for the title this season, albeit it's still pretty congested up there. What do you make of them? What do you make of that game?
Yeah, like you said, they have the players to be title contenders, and they probably drifted off a little bit for a while, but they've clawed themselves back up, and there's still a lot of games to play. We still have to go and play Galway as well, so that's kind of like a 6-point game. But look, I think for them, they've come good in the last couple of weeks, and I think Phil Trill's probably delighted with himself with the substitution that he makes. He brings Smith on the 85th minute and then scores the winner a few minutes later. Is always a nice one. But yeah, look, they're definitely a tough team. It's probably what's lacked in the last couple of years for them is that consistency, where it's probably against the lower teams that they've slipped up, dropped points against, and it's never against the top teams where they're not challenging or really getting beaten by. It always seems to be in the games that they should win is where they're dropping points. But they're probably looking at that table now, and they've clawed 3 points back up on Wexford. They're only a point off Wexford, I believe, and with a game in hand, and 6 off us, 7 off Athlone. There's a lot of games to be played, so I don't think they'd be seeing themselves as out of a challenge at all. Still a lot of games to play, so they're definitely up there in my opinion. One of the toughest games we've always had, especially in Namie DC Park. It's always really tough, and the mentality then to come back from 1-0 down and to score in the last minute is always the best way to win. So I'm sure they're flying high at the moment.
Yeah, and as I said, they have winning experience. They've won a couple of trophies under Phil Trill. So yeah, one to watch over the next couple of months. Elsewhere, Shamrock Rovers had too much for Sligo. Rovers in the showgrounds, they won 4-1. Anya O'Gorman got a brace. Miss O'Kane and Emily Corbett were also on target. Paul McGrory scored for Sligo. And DLR Waves outgunned Waterford 4-2 thanks to goals from Amber Cosgrove, Abby Brophy, Ashley Meaton got a brace there. Dina Bradley and Chloe Atkinson scored for Waterford. Let's look ahead to this cup final on Sunday, Rachel. Wexford versus Bohemians. That's at Ferry Park at 4:35 on Sunday. That was a coin toss to decide home advantage. So first blood to Wexford. Interesting matchup. Can you call it, or I mean, it's very hard to call any cup final, but it does seem that this would be a really tight game. Anyone in particular that think for either side that could settle it on the day?
Yeah, look, like you said, I think it's going to be a tight game. Their most recent game, they played each other in the FEI Cup, and it was a narrow 1-2-1 win to Bow. So there's not going to be a lot in it. But look, I think LOI is obviously the standout player for Wexford. She has been in the last number of years, and the only thing is she was playing up front against Treaty just Saturday gone, which I don't think she was as impactful in the game as when she plays midfield. She was kind of feeding off scraps, couldn't really get herself into the game. You're waiting on service when you're playing up front, so bit of a strange one. I thought probably not her best position. I think when she plays midfield, she can kind of grab the game by the scruff of her neck, get herself involved, and she creates goals out of nothing. So I don't know whether we'll see her up front again. I don't think it really worked for them. I think she might be dropped back into the middle for this final. I'm not sure, but it just seemed a bit of a strange. She probably wasn't as effective in the game as when she plays midfield. And the flip side then for Bows, their midfield has been excellent as well. Hannah Healy, Eva Brennan, these are these young players, and going to be up against the Wexford midfield, which is also quite young as well. They've Eva Kelly in there, and if they do have Ellen Malloy, so be kind of a battle of the youth in the midfield. Bows it's kind of where they've been strongest, I would say, in the last couple of weeks is their midfield. So I'm guessing that's maybe where the game is going to be won or lost. So that'd be an interesting one. Hannah O'Brien is find their form with Bowes up front. She's again a young player, came from Shells, who's kind of shining now at Bowes, and she got the goal against Galway, a really good goal. So I think she's going to be one to watch out for as well for Wexford. I think Bowes have threats from set pieces. Lisa Murphy, Roisin McGovern, they're big, tall players who've been scoring off set pieces for Bowes. So look, I think the midfield is probably going to be the most interesting battle. It's a good kind of young midfield against each other, a lot of energy in both teams in that midfield 2 or 3. So I think, look, it's really hard to call. If I was to call one, you'd probably maybe say Bowes just because of their last games against Wexford. But Wexford have that experience of being in finals, winning leagues, and this is Bowes' first ever time in a final. So you don't know how players are going to react or how they're going to perform. So look, I think it'd be a tough one to call, but I think I'm going to go with Bowes to win.
You'd imagine and expect that Carol Ward, if she can't make it personally, would at the very least send some of her backroom staff to come and have a look at this game. And as you spoke about there, Rachel, lots of young talent, lots of Ireland underage internationals will be involved. Obviously, LOI. Is there anyone else beyond, the usual names that could possibly turn ahead, if not for the playoffs this autumn, that maybe might be a little too soon for some of the younger players, but just further down the line?
I think it's probably the ones that we are picking out. It's the likes of Ella Malloy, but I think it's the young players off Bowes that are going to be the ones that we see in the future, like Hannah Healy, Ava Brennan. I think they're two like really high potential players that we have in our hands, and they're performing against senior players week in, week out. So like even Hannah Healy, the ball she played through for Hannah O'Brien against Galway was literally perfect. It was kind of on a play for Hannah O'Brien. So I think they're the ones that we have been picking out, and look, we're picking out for a reason. They're the real standout players. So look, for me, it'd be Hannah Healy and Ava Brennan, who are the ones that are for the future. Like Ellen Malloy has obviously been in and out before, so we kind of know her a bit more and probably more likely to see her maybe in the next couple of squads just because of her age and experience. But I think if Carla Ward is thinking, future 2 or 3 years down the line, she's going to be looking at the likes of Hannah Healy and Ava Brennan in that midfield for Bowes.
Yeah, and a good opportunity as well, just to show that they have the temperament for these sort of occasions. Cup final, hopefully a good crowd and piece of tin at the end of it. I'm gonna get you to stick your neck on the line, Rachel, before we wrap up, and give me a prediction. First of all, for Athlone Town against Breidablik on Wednesday. I'll ask you for a scoreline.
I'm gonna go 2-1 Athlone.
2-1 to Athlone, and for the All Ireland Cup final between Wexford and Bowes.
I'm gonna go 2-0 to Bowes.
2-0 to Bowes, right. Well, we will return next week to see how Rachel's predictions played out. I thank Rachel for her time, also Graham, Barry, and Alan earlier on, and we'll leave it there for this week. Thanks a lot for joining us. We'll be back again next Monday, and we'll see you then.